All right.
Yeah, I'm dying.
All right. Sleepy heads. All right, you guys, welcome to the Outrun show. This episode, we're going to be talking about athletes coming from other sports to train parkour. Which of the other sports sort of bring the best skills potentially over to parkour? And if we were going to train in another sports, maybe another sport for conditioning or to steal some of their skills to bring to parkour, what sports would those be? So let's get started. All right. You guys are up late last night playing video games. I feel like we just at least need to excuse that.
My game plan was to just like let you guys talk while I let this caffeine
Marinate.
work its way through my system. Yeah.
This is good. So we had like a little conversation a couple nights ago over Messenger, I think it was, or messages. iMessage? Whatever. We were chatting.
It was a chat.
We were chatting, and I can't remember the platform, but we were talking about, hey, I think that Jesse had been doing some programming recently, and I've been doing some programming recently, and some of the training came from people who spent time in other sports, and we were trying to think, okay, well, who are the best folks to go after? I think a lot of people who try and, sieve through broad training will go to different domains if they're smart and wise and try and learn what they're good at and then bring it back in order to grow. We talked about in a few episodes ago, like Camille LeBlanc, former female CrossFit Games athlete and winner, was coming and learning at one point parkour with Ryan, training Ryan, with Ryan Amos and myself in Boulder. And so how can we be wise and also go out and find stuff that makes us better, but might not be right in front of us? Now, there are parkour coaches who have programming that work on these skills that are sort of general conditioning or to improve power and speed and skill. You've got a handful of people who are close to us. Ryan Ford and Parkour EDU and Amos and Parkour EDU. You've got Rafe Kelly out doing Evolve Move Play. You have a few other folks in Europe who I'm not super familiar with who do programming. So it's not that we don't have this, but we're greedy. We like to go and find the gold. So we were chatting about, we think that this sport has this element. And so some of the things we were calling out right away were jumping ability. Like what are the sports that use sort of the same skills that we would use? And one of the first topics that came up was jumping ability, vertical jumping and horizontal jumping. What sports are using this already, and what are they already? Where do we see it, and what's it already good at? Justin had brought up headers in soccer, so
Which is actually a pretty impressive one. I didn't even think about that, but yeah, I mean, sometimes they end up they leap for those things, right? Like, I mean, we typically look at soccer as an aerobic sport, and it is, right? And aerobic is kind of like a foul word in the parkour world. As it kind of fits as we're power athletes, right? We're not usually running for longer than 60 seconds.
I think you have aerobic parkour, but to me it has the flavor of like jazz or something. It's just like very, very soft and in the background.
Yeah.
And there are some people out there who are like, I'm gonna go for a jog, and
So you have people who geek out on jazz, but for the most part, it's
right.
You just enjoy it and you just listen. Yeah.
What's Fred Armisten's? Oh, sorry. Okay.
I was just gonna pass it back to Justin since I stole it from him as to why he picked soccer.
Yeah, I think because they're short. This is my main reason.
So this was also what kept coming up in this conversation, which was, you guys, your opinions on the other sports were highly biased around height.
Because it matters, right?
It matters,
Like, it
right.
matters hugely. Like,
Right,
I mean,
but yeah.
So only tall people get to say that height doesn't matter. And it does. Like, not only is the math complete, the formula is still the same, but the variables have to change so much when your femur length is not 3 feet long, like an NBA, like all-star dunker.
Right.
Like the differences between his body and my body are so far that I think I said in this chat, he might as well be a different species from me. And I think that's super cool because I've always wanted like
Be able to jump like that.
an intelligent secondary species of human. I think that's cool.
You're like ready for our evolutionary branch to just start
spreading into some other. Yeah, I think that's super cool. Since
It'll
humans
definitely happen
humans
first with
killed off
basketball.
our other
Holy cow.
other human species like 50,000 years ago or whatever.
Yeah, the other humanoids.
It broke my heart.
Yeah.
So now, eventually, I mean, down the long chains, unless
Uh-huh.
something happens to humanity, we'll have people who are 9 feet tall.
Yeah, I mean, you might be able to just get the shot, right? Like, I'm waiting for the EpiPen to fix the knee cartilage, but I'm just like, oh man, I ground through that cartilage too quick. All right, boom.
Stem cells
Hit me
in there.
with that stem cell EpiPen. But also, like, the femur growth EpiPen might be kind of cool. But you better get the dosage right. Otherwise, you're gonna have like one femur that's like,
that's
it's like a
right.
6-inch
There's some
difference.
around there.
If you gallop up to your jumps, no, that would be ridiculous.
So, have you done any actual research?
No, I haven't.
on-
Not on soccer programming.
Okay.
No, but I imagine they're doing quite a bit of kicking and quad work. So
So they have a lot of those
maybe
drills.
it'd be more applicable to like an orbit tricking.
Maybe.
In terms of
See that,
the
swing through.
specific
Well, because
conditioning.
in tricking you're so you're always swinging one leg, but you're always planting the same leg down too, which I imagine in soccer you have a pretty good idea
Bias.
of planting one foot, having a lot of support on that one, and stabilizing that leg while swinging the other one.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and that's where I would mainly focus. I'm not too worried about trying to jump further. I've already given up. I'm not
Alright.
sprouting wings anytime soon.
All right, that's sad, but okay. So the element of kicking, I think that's something I didn't think about, but is very important in what we do, 'cause especially on the style side of things. You know, kicking and swinging your kicks, that's those strong hip flexors, and you want mobile hip flexors for that. I mean, just that, and when you think about the flexibility aspect of it, I would argue probably those soccer players are up there with flexibility on those team sports. I think that's an
as
advantage.
far as like if you were to do
Baseline,
graph them,
yeah.
a baseline, yeah, you're probably right. At least in the hip flexor area, maybe overhead's probably not.
Yeah,
like
overhead, those guys, like, I'm not even, yeah, sorry.
they're
They
not
don't-
allowed to.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
maybe for out of bounds when they're throwing it in.
Well, the goalies.
Well,
Yeah,
every
but
player has to be
that's
able to
still
throw it
just-
that way.
Yeah,
And
so they
the
throw a
further you
little
throw
overhead.
that,
throwing.
they might have just a little bit. That seems more closer to like Lachey technique. Actually.
Maybe a little bit of throwing. Maybe.
See.
Maybe.
I mean, they've got to be able to throw that ball pretty far.
Right, that's true. But they're not
Yeah,
going
I
to
think-
touch,
I
like,
think- but-
baseball on throwing or
No.
anything
Yeah.
like that.
Well,
or even
but
that's-
that's a
that's
weird
right.
pattern though. This is straight over the head that they do.
for,
I mean, I would think that maybe that's some bronze
Yeah.
coins that we can get out of there. But
Yeah.
the gold is absolutely
I like
hip
it.
flexor and
That's
quad
a good
work
one.
that they
Where's
Yeah.
the best for shoulder?
Because hold on real quick before we transition out of soccer. Like, think about travel for like a Webster, right? So if you have really good splits and a lower center of gravity, advantage of short people, right? Your Websters are.
Don't tell us what our advantages are, by the way.
I wasn't talking to you guys directly. I was just saying advantages of short people. I didn't even make eye contact. Jeez. So those, like, if you can not leave the ground on a Webster and already have your leg, the kicking leg,
Oh, yeah.
completely up over your head, or maybe even past to some degree, like your range of travel is very limited. But if you have really tight hip flexors and glutes,
Yeah.
you may have the power that sends that Webster really fast. But as far as like efficiency, no, that mobility is going to matter.
Yeah.
But kicking also translates to strides.
Yeah,
Yep.
I would imagine.
Absolutely, 100%, which is why track athletes also should come up, because they have that really good long stride range of mobility, open hips, right? Fast and strong, those guys as well. All right.
Yeah, track. I think it's worth stating though, like track athletes is a broad range of individuals, right? Like track athlete can be
Shot put guy
can
is
be,
not.
They're completely different.
Well, that's track and field.
Body type.
Oh, okay. All right.
So that would be field athletes, but like track. I mean, you have endurance runners, right, who are running your like 1,800 meter like races, which is still like relatively short in the grand scheme of endurance. but is 6 times as long as what we need to train.
So that's running. So the other factor is running. So I think we talked about running, jumping, and climbing being like the meat and taters of what we do, and the track athletes are going to definitely do really well at running, right? I mean,
Yeah.
So how far matters, right? I mean, if you're talking about like method natural, like maybe you're going to go from, you know, a city to city running to do, and you're going to do some stuff like in the middle. But if you're talking about how parkour is mostly practice, it's very short. Like you're probably not talking longer than 100 meters of travel, right?
That's a lot of travel.
But I'm just saying, I'm
meters.
giving a lot of fluff there, right?
Yeah.
For like maybe you're doing a line through the woods or something, and it is a little bit longer. But in most gyms, you're not going to be able to travel more than what, 50, 25,
100 feet.
yeah,
50, yeah, 100 if you.
But
get
if you're
a
like
big
down
space.
back, you know, you're still not. Or even outside settings, most of the time, if you're a speed athlete, you're going to have a little more travel. But skill athletes are only going like 5 to 15 feet, right, for most of what they're doing. It's like a single or combined
Some of them
move of
can
power,
go.
right?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely not like more than I would say 30 feet of travel on like a
Right,
line.
so you could have like a lache stride pre and make it almost across the gym. That would be pretty far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're getting like, yeah, maybe a little north of 30, but for the most part, yeah, you're always going to be under 100 meters. But I think where track athletes, since there's only a few track athletes that actually run less than 100 meters. In fact, you can't. You get at 100 meters and then you have 110 meter hurdles, right? Those are your 2 shortest events, aside from like long jump, I guess. But I think that being said, that doesn't mean if you're listening and you are like, oh, well, I'll never run more than 100 meters, so I never need to run more than 100 meters. I would say the upward, like the northern limit of training should be somewhere around the 400. Should be what you should regularly practice,
like your work
running
capacity.
a 400. Yeah, because the truth is, you may not run more than 100 meters, but that doesn't mean that you're gonna run one line and be like, done. Right? Like
right.
I did 12 seconds of you know, really fast like parkour line, and now I'm done. Like you're gonna go back and try it again. So you do need some sort of like recovery.
And you
ability.
also need that, you know, that anabolic work capacity, right? So you want to be able to do work for even though your distance isn't traveled, the amount of time that you're actually exerting effort, the amount of time that your heart is working is longer,
Yes.
right? And then recovery within that matters. So there is, I think, there's definitely some value in science about just having a decent work capacity that an athlete needs who's going to do work over an extended period of time, even if that ends up being they're just doing one long jump, right? Trying some critter.
I splashed.
Okay, sorry.
Nobody else
All right.
noticed until I
It's a,
cried about it though.
you
Sorry.
drew attention to the no crying over a missed bebe. So for the soccer athletes, the kicking, that's going to matter. I'm going to say some of those drills that those guys are working on that would be similar to the track drills where you have the tempo, the rhythm, the tempo drills. They're really cool,
Yeah.
right? Like knee drive, skip, kick, knee drive, skip, kick. You see those guys like marching almost like
the mock drills,
yeah.
the skips, A, B skips. Yeah,
Yeah.
those are really cool.
I think that's probably a fundamental that I've worked on a little bit and I enjoy, but I think it, as a parkour athlete, might be a good just general sort of benchmark to have, right?
Yeah.
Cool. So that's and then for kicking. For those guys over on the track side, I think this is a good time to talk a little bit about track because I want to point out that one of the things I notice about the other sports in contrast, because we want to go to track right away, I feel like, because people think about parkour, they think about, oh, I want somebody who's fast, who can run, who can jump.
And we know the track athletes that did the competition just blows away.
Yeah.
Like Julian.
Yeah, like Julian,
they're really
they
fast,
just
right?
Yeah.
very fast, and they destroy us. And some of that is the organic nature, I think, of parkour, in that the sport as a discipline, didn't grow within traditional sports. So sort of that athletes have to make it there without the benefit of some of these sports training methods that a lot of track athletes will receive from middle school, basically,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
So there's just that. but still, the fact you can walk on and do so well, and then start working on parkour and just have this great foundation, there's a ton of value to that. One thing I'll notice about track athletes, though, that I want to call out about other sports like soccer, football, baseball, things like that, is that the directional changes and the agility aspect seems to be a little bit different. You know what I mean? Like, most of the time in track, there is a little turn in what you're doing, but most of the time you're going pretty straight.
You get one turn. Yeah, and even hurdles are, because somebody might counter, well, you have events where they're jumping every 11 meters, right? Or 10 meters, really. And that's the hurdle. But the truth is, a good hurdler doesn't change elevation.
Yeah.
That's the whole point, right?
It's the same leg, right? It's always the same pattern.
It's always
so
the
you're
same
always
right or
reaching
left,
the first leg over.
So actually that's a really good point in that there's no elevation or lateral shifts of change. In which case, then we shift to sports like soccer, who actually do a lot of that. Now that I think about it, I don't know why I slept on soccer. Maybe because it just leans so aerobic that I was like, no offense against soccer, just it's not my thing. But yeah,
right.
I'm gonna have to do some more research on that. But then we lean to sports like soccer. Football is one where direction change is huge, right? And then you start looking at running backs
and external direction changes.
Yeah,
the obstacles are coming for you in football.
Yeah. So that's the other thing, and like you have that in soccer as well. Soccer can be pretty rough.
Yeah.
But the contact is definitely different. I think basketball is actually somewhere in between. Mm-hmm. Because you're not getting tackled, but they're much more laxed on contact versus soccer, in my opinion. I mean, you always see people, those comedy memes of people like, looking at someone twice and the person like grabs their face and ankle and like falls over because they're trying to get the...
Culturally, I don't know why that's a thing in soccer.
I don't know if anyone really likes it.
Because like those dudes, I mean, like those soccer dudes are legitimately tough.
They're tough.
Like they're not, small, light dudes. Like they tend to be like what you see and you'd be like, that dude's an athlete, whereas like sometimes you can be mistaken on other sports, not that they're not athletes, but you know what I mean, you look at them physically and you're like, he looks like he's healthy, I guess. But like you can tell soccer athletes are athletes. And
yeah, I think that a lot of it is just that the way that the penalties are handled is such an incentive, such an advantage to that. You see a little bit of that in basketball, but I think that it works so much better for... I mean, that's a lot of work in soccer. You might just want to break, right?
It's like, carry me out on a stretch.
Like, I need a nap. So I'm sure, like, if you're listening and you're like, no, this is what soccer or football, if you're coming outside of the U.S. that brings, then yeah, I'll holler if you think of some other advantages. But I'm gonna go with I take the kicking, some of those drills, and then the agility element of it. I think that's something that track might be lacking, but we could hear that debate too. Track is definitely one of those things where the actual field is almost just built for you to go faster, right? Like, it's not working against you.
And usually you're in, spiked shoes on the track when you run. And the shoes are like bricks, like little lightweight bricks, but they're not super flexible. The bottom. Mm-hmm. The toe parts is all like those quarter-inch spikes.
Yep.
And you have your arch that's a solid stiff piece of plastic. They're pretty stiff. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
And they're super light. So there's just
light.
as little friction as possible for track, for sure.
Yeah, which I did this a while ago, but the research and the math on like having big feet when running is a massive disadvantage.
Oh,
like
really?
And by the heavier your feet are, like it just takes, because I mean, think about it. Like if I were to strap a 5-pound weight to the side of your foot and run, it takes so much more effort for you to lift it up. But it was a substantial increase in percentage of like efficiency.
So just saying, like, smaller feet, people are better at.
So like,
was that say sprinting?
Like a lighter feet, not necessarily smaller. Because you do want that wide surface area to be able to push off of, but
you want those bird
but you
feet.
Want lighter. You want
bird
lighter
feet
are more efficient because it takes less effort to have to lift them back up.
I can see bigger feet being a better lever.
Yeah, the ankle right along that Achilles. Yeah.
That's super cool. I didn't think of that either. I think that in parkour it's pretty easy to develop some club feet. So
yeah, you get some big feet, boys.
Yeah, it's very easy. You take a lot of beating, and that's going to make a lot of the foot grow in a very hobbitsy way. So, all right, well that's cool. So track, I think.
So track.
Let's talk about weaknesses. It just seems like a low-hanging answer. Like it's like, what are the weaknesses of track? I mean, it's obvious these guys train very specifically to be explosive and straight and fast, and just realize what can the human body, put out for power and energy over a particular distance. But
track's very asymmetrical. Almost everything's always has a dominant foot, or I might feel like sprinting. That one's not so asymmetric because you're just going straight. But high jump, it's always off the same foot.
Yeah.
Hurdles is always going to be with the same foot
Triple
reaching
jump,
over.
same leg.
Long jump and triple jump are always on the same feet, so you're never changing your pattern. So I would say it's the improper alignment. I wouldn't put track athletes in improper alignment. That's what I would be most
improper
afraid of.
alignment. Yeah, you're saying they're not the alignment is the asymmetry is an issue.
Yep.
And also, I would say the agility for directional change is an issue, probably.
Yeah, I was on the same thread.
And then they're, again, not up against changes in, well, I guess you got the jumps. I guess they're going to jump the sand or something, but in parkour, you've got to deal with stuff that's uneven surfaces all over the place.
We're contrasting its negatives to parkour. So if you're a track athlete listening, we're not bashing your sport and saying that you need these things.
Right.
We're just saying as it applies to our sport.
Yeah, if
that's
you're
where the
transitioning
weakness
from
would
track
be.
to parkour.
A better thing to say is if you're trying to, let's talk about it that way, because I agree, I don't want to talk bad about other people putting so much work into a sport. So say if you're coming out of track into parkour, directional changes in elevations, that's the thing you got to work out for, and then also the need to develop some climbing skills. There's almost none in there. Dare I say
There
it?
are no climbing skills.
The pole vault.
That's an underbar.
Ooh, actually, yeah. Yeah, pole vault is the only one, but that is a really practical skill in parkour. In the underbar, and that's a start screen mechanic, right?
Yes.
So you jump to the bar and pull and kick, and now you got a nice big backswing to lash it. So yeah, that is a cool skill actually. But very few of the percentage of track athletes
are doing that.
Right,
skill.
you have subset that are. So that's why I think track is a tricky one, because there are so many different events. But it's also cool because it gives us a bunch of different events to essentially pick and choose from, right?
Yeah.
We can take our tempo drills and our sprinting drills from our sprinters, and we can take our plyometric skills from our triple jumpers, long jump, and high jump, right? And then we can look at some, midline stability as well as overhead mobility and pull strength from our pole vaulters.
Yeah,
so
that's a good one. Oh yeah, those are good. So yeah, there's more there. There's more gold there for sure.
Yeah,
but I don't know if I would go train pole vault to improve my parkour. I don't know. I don't think I would do that. I would say maybe coming out of that, if you had that skill, think about that. That's gonna help you. But I don't know if I'd go that direction to learn it. Oh, maybe there's some drills out there that are good. Yeah. Soccer. If you're coming out of soccer into parkour, you're gonna slay at agility, and probably acceleration is gonna be pretty good as well.
Footwork,
some foot-eye coordination.
Footwork. You're gonna have nice open hips for strides. You're gonna understand that really well. You're probably gonna be a really good strider. But if you never did a pull-up, climbing,
have a hard time. Climbing's gonna be your biggest hurdle.
Yep. It's gonna feel like your lower body was made for this, and your upper body is elementary at best. Because I've worked with a good amount of former soccer folks. And with the exception of if you think about athletes and coaches that we have, like Kurt, who was soccer guy, but then did calisthenics. So then his upper body was already developed for that. So it's really easy to get him into it. But I have some other athletes that come in, and they're just their lower body is just really well developed. They're very springy. Again, they look like they have really light feet. They're just oh man, they can just jump. And their coordination's really good too. The foot-eye coordination is really good, which is a major benefit. And I don't know if that's going to be anywhere in any other sport quite like soccer is. But their upper body is just absolutely ignored. It's just it's like the closet that never got cleaned out.
It's against the rules, actually.
It's against the rules, and they're actually. So we should talk about this just a little bit too. I want to bring up the point that. When you're talking about jumping and these lower body skills, body weight skills, having a heavy upper body is not advantageous, only so much so that it contributes to what needs to happen with the lower body. So if you're doing jumping and you're in soccer, you only want to develop enough body to help you contribute to the jump.
Yep.
Anything heavier than that, unless you're like, and that there may be some specific scenarios, but in general, it's gonna work the other way, right? In parkour, if you do have a heavier upper body and a better developed upper body, it can help you with climbing, but the skill side of things might actually be a really good fit for you because there's more bar work, right? There's more like power, and you've got a developed upper body that can really help.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bell curve, right? Like we had talked about that. At some point, you're trading off the efficiency and the extra, lightweight, right? The lighter you are, the easier you are to move, right? On the mathematic formula. But then, like, in order to get stronger, you want to increase muscle tissue. But at some point, that strength gain that you've got
For weight.
Weight kind of bells off. I don't know where that is. That changes for different athletes.
And different skills. Like if you're if you decide you're going to go do a high level parkour comp and you're like making the decision between, am I going to do, let's just say, I mean, there are some crazy like, Bo Jackson type parkour athletes who will do speed skill style. They'll do those multiple divisions, but let's just take those people as exceptional anomalies and just say, I'm going to make a decision. I'm going to focus on speed, skill, or style. The attributes you're going to want to draw are going to be a little bit different. If you're going for speed, the top speed athletes tend to be lighter folks. They're going to look a little bit more like a soccer player would, or like a basketball player might in some situations where they're very long and light, and most of their weight's carried in the lower body, and they do need climbing, but they need climbing that's fast, right? But a lot of the skills athletes are bigger, power. They look like bigger, more traditional power athletes, right? They're bigger up top. They're maybe more well-rounded in strength, and they're gonna hit, 3 or 4 things that require a lot of muscle mass to deal with, and then they're gonna use their weight to their advantage when they're swinging and when they're throwing. They look like, gymnasts with a lower body, right?
Yeah.
Because we could talk about. People might be wondering why we haven't brought up gymnastics, and I think that. And that's another easy one, like track. Oh, well, if I was a gymnast, I'd be awesome at parkour. And yeah, there's on the style side, you're going to slay. But you've got to work out some of the more traditional ways of doing style. Like you're not like your flavor might not be that, because we highly bias the uniqueness of style, right? Mm-hmm. And coming out of gymnastics, there's not a lot of variety. I mean, you have these compulsory routines.
Yeah. The idea is to remove your individual style, right? Like you're trying to meet an idealized angles and shapes and positioning of this move, right? As to what the rule book has decided is ideal. Your style. The idea is like no Travis here.
Right.
The Travis is gone.
take yourself away. And I think that this is just real quick. Let's talk about why we're not gymnastics in this through this lens, which is. We're on polar sides of opposites when it comes to the individual versus the sport's predetermined aesthetic mattering, right? You're on mostly tools that are simple but are sport specific, right? Like, the bars in gymnastics, those wooden bars are designed to flex and are designed to help the athlete achieve those aesthetics and those forces, right? Yeah. Exactly. Like just because you can perform on the uneven bars doesn't mean you could perform well on the uneven scaffolding outside of a build.
Well, and about the only one that's actually a direct transition over is like the high bar, right? Like that's about the only apparatus in terms of just what it is that you'll find in a parkour gym.
And the diameter of the high bars for gymnastics are much different than the diameter for high bars or bars found in general in parkour. The diameter is much bigger. Like it looks like, again, we're building all our stuff against scaffolding because that's what's found in industrial environments where you would encounter it, right? Our roots are in that. So we aren't the specific stuff is just borrowed from elements outside. The other thing is. Gymnasts typically aren't great jumpers. Like there's some examples of like floor routines and stuff like that, but they're leveraging spring, and I'm not saying they're not athletic, but I'm just saying like that's not the forte, and usually that's going to be a deficit when they're coming into parkour. Is some of those skills that you would have gotten in like a team sport or track is not really present in, and so much what we do is lower body. So
it's almost shifted too. Like parkour, I feel like used to be pretty even split between like 50% hand skills, 50% like legs. And it's definitely shifted now where it's like, if you want to be good at the sport in a competitive format, it's almost like 85% lower body.
Agreed.
Yep.
And that's why people would say, oh, well, it's so logical that gymnastics should be associated with parkour, but it's really not. It actually probably belongs closer to track and field. And if you think about it, the style elements, yeah, because the routines can be done in that manner, but not the like speed and skill side of things. Like it just doesn't. Maybe I wish we would have been snagged up by track and field instead of gymnastics.
Like I feel like it's like looking at a fox.
I was just thinking that too when we were talking about track and field.
It's like looking at a fox and seeing that it has a lot of characteristics that make it look like a cat. But then it's not a cat.
Nope.
It's a dog.
Yep.
Very adorable.
A magical dog.
It's a magical dog, but it's a dog, right? And cats are cats. And then of course once you bring them together, like you can compare them objectively and you'd be like, oh yeah, no, totally. That makes sense why this is a cat, feline, and this is a canine, right?
Did you ever hear that story of the woman who was sold a ferret in place of a Pomeranian at a pet store? Like she was billed, yes. She was billed and sold for, I believe it was a Pomeranian, and had gotten the animal. I don't know whether she was able to identify it or not, but it was a ferret. So I kind of feel like gymnastics, you guys just got a ferret. You think you got a Pomeranian.
When they what?
When they try to take over parkour.
Okay, yeah.
Which is definitely still happening. Okay, so the gymnastics, yeah, guys, style side, some bar work stuff. You're obviously beasts, and as gymnastics also selects for amazing athletes, so anybody coming out of that high level has really survived that crucible. Not necessarily, it wasn't like gymnastics gave them every tool they'd need to do parkour, and it is very awkward to see gymnasts try to do parkour right away. It looks more natural when you see a track athlete trying to do parkour, in my opinion. On the style side, I'd take a b-boy over a gymnast most of the time, or a tricker or something like that, right? So, again, there's those guys. Football and basketball, all right? I hadn't been looking at... Well, let's talk about football first, because that's an easier one. We oftentimes look at... Because there's such a variety of like body types in
football, yep.
In football. I think they're going to have the same strengths, like the agility aspect of it, like we got out of soccer. Yep. They're on turf, but it's better maybe better than track, because there's a little bit uneven ground if they're not playing on like the AstroTurf or whatnot, playing on like a grass field. And then also the distance that they're moving, 10 yards is amazing. That's
the
great.
time that they move too. All plays are always really short. So
really short plays. So coming out of that, your explosivity out of the line, running, going to be good, right?
But they also train with the capacity that if you get lucky, you take it all the way home, right?
Yes.
And so they need to be operating 80% of the time within that short 10 to 15 yards, right? Mm-hmm. But then also ready for potentially a 60-yard sprint to the end zone. You know what I mean? If they get an open window. So I think that's what's a benefit about football, is that just like parkour, they plan to operate here, but keep in the realm of possibility that they may need to expand that work capacity to something external, right? But a track athlete knows, I'm running 100 meters. At no point during my competition will the guy be like, it's suddenly a 200, and you're like, oh shoot, and you got to keep running, right? It's this is when it ends.
Unless he's late.
Yeah, they run real fast.
Sorry, dad jokes. Dad jokes.
It's okay. You have a kid. You can make that.
Yeah, right. So the other strength is there's probably some I feel like there's enough jumping involved in football, especially if you're playing out a ways from the. Well, no, they would jump too if they as a defender as well. So I think that jumping.
They definitely don't train jumping in football. You're not supposed to leave the ground in football, unless maybe you're wide receiver. But yeah, when I played, if I jumped, it's the injury for the chance of being injured
go way up.
When
right.
Yeah, because you're just in the air, everyone can hit you, and then you're just an easy target.
You're not grounded.
If you're on ground, you can move and you can dodge, but yeah, I was taught to never jump into even the end zone.
So then,
wide receivers do need to jump though, and I think they would train that, and that's why there is a pass interference, right? That's why you can't hit a guy before he's caught the ball,
right?
Because he's going to be jumping for it, and he's going to be in a vulnerable position. So they try and prevent that, which I do appreciate as a rule.
Which is not you're not supposed.
But yeah, I mean, about the only person that's jumping are wide receivers, and those dudes
and the defenders associated with them.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So we were just talking more about positions than if we're talking about football. So like, what's probably a better position? Because we had been talking about typically I would go like wide receiver because fast, can jump.
Yeah.
Is running probably a distance more typically that we would run regularly, even if they're not actually being involved with the play. They still have to run out there and cut. Directional change is going to be really good for those folks.
Yep.
And hand-eye coordination, but maybe not foot-eye coordination is the same level as soccer. But still, there is some you have to be able to spot stuff. So your vestibular system is going to be pretty tight on tight turns, and you're always kind of in the periphery worried about being hit. So you're your proprioception, your awareness of what where you are in space has to be tied into gravity, or you're going to get wrecked.
Yep.
But you were saying running back. Is that just because of size, or was why? Why did you think running back?
I was saying running back because they tend to be really amazing sprinters. They operate in that short window of time, right? And their ability for direction changes is super incredible.
Also really good.
Yeah, because that's just kind of what they're looking for when they're trying to find that pocket, right?
Right.
And trying to make that play. But yeah, I mean, more of it applied specifically to me in that size, and that you have a wider swath of running backs historically in the NFL that are my height, right? And so when I'm doing my research, I'm selfish, and I'm like, I want research that applies to me.
Right.
If I had this 6'3" athlete, I would be looking for stuff for him or her, but right now I'm researching for me, so that's primarily why.
So I think you could maybe say just and people feel free to be enraged about this or have a different argument, but I think maybe then parkour skills athlete, running back, and speed wide receiver.
Yeah, because they both need to be really powerful athletes off the block, right? You don't have any time for wind up, but where skills athletes do need to jump, but it seems like speed athletes, there's probably a bell curve. Maybe we could ask some of the people we know that track this data. But I would love to see what is a single leg running jump and what's a single leg running stride versus placement in a course, because I would guarantee the people who can stride bigger gaps
Maybe better in speed
are going to be clustered up near the top of that podium, right? And so they need that ability to jump, whereas skilled athlete do need to jump, but typically it's more combination, it's more rounded, running, jumping, swinging, climbing, right? Kind of the combination of their challenges. So
when I think skills athlete, I think one of the biggest factors where you do end up with some swinging and speed, the advantage of catching and casting and taking the time to do that does not have the same lever of advantage that skill has in skill, right? So definitely you're more biased to those bigger swinging movements, I think, in skill than you would be in speed. There's definitely times when you use it, but it's just I've watched so much skill where you see an athlete make 5 to 10 attempts taking a deep breath, doing, setting up for trying to like wind up for a giant or just wind up for a big old cast on a swing, then hitting that 4 or 5 times. That would have been determined for them within seconds in a speed course. Like they don't get to go back and try that again. They have to be as fast as they can to that swing. If there's a big cast that's involved, that better make up for like a very complex 10 feet or whatever that they would have had to deal with had they done it otherwise. Like there's a very rare where that swing is gonna save you that much time, right? Like I'm trying to think of a time where
it's not. Don't swing.
I don't think anyone's found a way to make a lache faster than.
I mean, the only thing would be like if you had to like the door downstairs went outside and you ran around a bit, or you could lache like this big, but then you just run it.
I think Amos tried to get people to lache.
We were talking about it over that foam pit,
and he put the pool underneath the bar, and then one of the contestants just ran through the water.
That was Hendo, yeah. Hendo just ran through the pool.
Yeah, so.
Although Salgado did that dope Kong Pre.
Oh yes, yeah, over it, yep. So yeah, I think people have tried to make laches fast, and it just doesn't happen.
It's just it's definitely falls more into the skill and style, like that skill falls into the skill and style
yes,
realm.
Exactly.
Because it's just not faster than jumping.
Because whenever you swing, you hit the same. You almost you double back on your path, right? Especially if you jump to a bar and have to swing backwards. You're just doing the same line
twice.
And over again.
So you've gone backwards twice, which is not in speed is not a good idea.
And in speed, where the podiums are decided by less than a second,
fractions.
Like you can't. That's literally I took one extra step and I lost that competition because of it, right?
Yeah.
That's how big it is. So swings are just too big of a trade-off.
Yep.
For that, and there's a possibility, and
there's always
maybe
exceptions.
somebody's listening to this right before they make a competition, and they're gonna try and find a way. They're like, the lache is gonna be the fastest way. The only way I could see it is if I don't know.
It's so tough. I feel like I've tried it several times, in more than several times in our speed comps in the level 3 class. So.
Let's move on to
basketball. Okay. Why am I excited about talking about basketball? Is because I just have not been looking at it, right? And I'm like, oh man, like there's a lot going on here that we could borrow from. So these guys are already running on a basketball court, which is about the size of a parkour gym. Maybe about half court's a parkour gym for most. Maybe less.
Yeah.
They're about.
They're
Right? You get a
small.
big parkour gym, you get a big area of training outside. It's probably not going to be much bigger than a basketball court.
Okay, yeah.
You're running up and down constantly. So let's just say you're a very excited parkour athlete, right? You're training. You're like out on a lunch break. you're like, oh, I gotta train, so I'm gonna go out and do that. You've got the jumping, like that. You're constantly jumping in basketball. That is a sport where you can jump. The contact is tough enough that you are gonna have to like be used to being in contact with people, but you're not always afraid of being tackled. You're willing to take some jumping risks and some movement risks there that may translate better. What are the other things that strengths I just totally ignored about? I mean, just jumping in general. Like height is a huge bias in basketball, but still, the methods of training that you would have to use to be able to jump higher are only going to benefit you. So let's just say you're not a super tall basketball player. Then you're going to have to work on jumping height or play in a position where it doesn't matter, but almost always it matters, right? And you do the occasional pull-up because you don't. But, I mean, technically you don't actually need to pull up. But sometimes people do in a show if they're trying to break the backboard or something. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I mean, yeah, if you're dunking, you gotta
be able to pull a little bit.
You gotta be able to pull a little bit when you catch the rim.
You gotta make sure your bails are good coming out of the swing.
Yeah, that's the thing too about basketball that I think is a huge benefit is that they do know how to fall pretty well, right? I mean, when your vertical jump is 40 inches and you're already 6'5", 7 feet, that's a lot. You're in the air, so very high. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And those guys aren't light. They're not like $160. They're heavier dudes. And so that's a lot of force that has to come down on the ground. And typically, like they're getting checked. somebody standing underneath them, they hit the backboard with their
See-
shoulder or something like that. They come down at weird angles, right?
Yeah.
But you
All
don't
those cat landings.
you don't often see clips. There are clips, but you don't see a lot of them of like basketball players like breaking an ankle. You know,
Yeah, I've seen
typically you see them fall and slide across the floor, and they're like this,
right.
Right.
And they have some resilience.
and then they just like they stand up. Yeah,
Because they have to keep playing, right? You don't see them throwing the same cards.
and
Every
their
once in a while they do
ankles,
get-
their ankles matter to them.
their
Right?
ankles do matter. That's why they have
So
those
they-
shoes that are just like massive around the freaking ankle, right? Those high tops, right? So I think, so I think also super impressive thing is like the guys who can like freaking dunk from the free throw line.
I mean, yeah, they're running. They're running.
Still,
yeah.
but
No,
running
that's
stride.
huge. That's massive.
That's massive. What is that distance?
I don't know. What
Standard?
is that?
Colin, you
Have-
check that out real quick.
we-
It's gotta be like 10.
None of us. Did you play basketball?
In elementary school, I'm pretty sure I just got like
This
booed
is
off
the-
the team like instantly.
This is the one sport I don't have any. Yeah,
I appreciate
knowledge
Travis you not asking us if we play basketball.
on.
15 feet.
15 feet.
Fif-
So 15
Yay.
feet, and then the standard rim is 10, right?
Yeah.
So 15 feet
So-
to a 10-foot rim. So are they saying the distance is 15 foot from the free throw line to the rim, like straight?
So what's the square root of? What is that? 100.
What's the
Times-
Pythagorean theorem?
300. What's the square root of 350?
Can't do.
Figure it
Too
out,
much
Colin.
He has a phone, so
Yeah, he's working on it. That's his homework. So the
18.
18. So you're covering 18 feet
18 feet up.
to get the arc.
Yeah. That's woo.
That is
That's a
huge,
big
right?
deal.
And so athletes doing that, again, they're really tall, but still, man, if you came in, you had that ability to travel in parkour, if you could deal with the changes, so what you're going to be up against after that. Also, they do work with their upper body a little bit more. You know, they're holding on to the ball, they're throwing the ball, they're going to have their shoulders are going to have to be a little stronger. Occasionally, they are grabbing a rim. They're doing some hanging. It's perhaps the only one of these sports that's any kind of hanging.
Yeah. Well, and they're doing a lot of pushing. right?
Gymnastics, right?
Yeah, well, yeah,
Like,
besides
they are doing
gymnastics,
pushing against another big dude,
Right.
And they're constantly like a basketball player with his arms down here is going to get reamed by his coach. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like they're always up here or reaching. So it's like, yeah, their shoulders don't get a lot of rest. They're
And
up
the
here
agility.
the whole time. Just
Agility aspect's very high,
Very
and they're
high.
used to a surface that can be slick. Like they wipe those down, but you know, I mean, as a basketball player, if you hit like a sweaty spot, right, or something like that, like right, you have some instability there, so it's not quite as good as like wet grass for stuff. But they're wearing cleats, so the stability aspect is definitely there. The agility aspect. So score them on agility, score them on jumping, and upper body's going to be moderate. You know,
It'll be vertical though. I feel like vertical versus horizontal jump is going to be a slightly different too.
yeah, but but you know, vertical jump is the harder element. So if you can, if you
But-
come in with a high vertical, like laying that out is not as hard as being like, oh, I can jump really far, but I require, you know.
So when I was looking at this research up, they had combined, or they were comparing vertical jump with horizontal jump in sports, and it was horizontal jump that related to speed more, but neither of the jumps, vertical or horizontal, were necessarily meant that you ran faster. So there is some difference in how they train each horizontal jump versus vertical jump versus sprinting speed. And they weren't that connected as
Yeah.
much as I thought.
No, I could see that.
So I
logic.
think for basketball, the vertical is going to be the most important thing that you can take away from it. But
Yep.
I don't know how you test them on horizontal jump, because that's,
I mean, you really typically aren't.
I mean, no
doing-
sport besides parkour does horizontal jumping and track and field. So
ooh, let's dig into that. Can we find one real quick? Think.
I mean, football technically does if you're trying to get to that end zone. If you're trying to dive over people, if you're trying to, you have to have
Yeah, but those are really
one off.
isolated
Mhm.
yeah,
incidents where people do that, and they're usually like cool plays. But like, yeah, I mean, you know,
but I'm glad that they tested
Run
it
it
at
in the
least
end.
in the combine. But you can see it. Some players
Yeah.
have really bad jumping form. They're still hitting 10 feet, but
it's true.
so
Yeah, because some of it is just what that sport's selecting for the athletic ability. Right?
So-
Yeah, I
but
mean,
yeah,
I would
if I were
still,
to-
I would still like to point out just real quick on that point, the combine. Parkour athletes, the world record for the broad jump is an NFL player.
High jump too, right? Or standing vertical jump is an NFL player too, right?
No, I think that's an NBA player.
I saw
I've seen
or
vertical.
volleyball.
But either way,
I saw
my
high
point
ones on
is,
volleyball,
my
too.
point is,
Yeah, that's
parkour
awesome.
athletes out there, that title belongs to us. The world's best broad jump. Can we work together to steal that? Because I know physiologically that's probably not going to be me, but somebody out there who does parkour.
What is the world record of broad jump?
It's like 12'3" or
Okay.
something like that.
So
Yeah,
that's
standing broad
massive.
jump, and you can watch it, and there's if that person was incorporating, I can't remember the athlete, but I remember watching the jump, and I'm like, if that person was incorporating a parkour style broad jump, he would have had another foot on it. Because I saw
maybe.
his
I mean,
jump, it's not like as deep as the parkour landings.
It's not.
12 feet.
The world record is 12
2
foot.
inches.
12'2". Okay.
12'2".
So,
12
From the
foot 2
combine,
inches.
right?
Yeah, probably a combine.
yeah, it was relatively recent actually in the terms of. But anyways, yeah. So parkour athletes claim that title for sport.
We have a chance.
Claim glory.
Claim the glory.
Yeah.
Bring it home. Bring that trophy home.
Right.
Vertical jump is not as important in parkour, but it's absolutely still important.
I think it's important because if you have, a 2 foot, I think layups translate as well to over to parkour. Because think about your takeoffs from layups, and then your transitions to jumping on top of stuff, right? So if you have to make a quick vertical change, it's probably not going to be, a 2 foot jump. It's probably going to be a single leg jump if you have some momentum into it. If it's for distance,
Oh yeah, I mean they're absolutely where NBA's will absolutely they can, I'm certain, out jump us horizontally. Just because they're really good jumpers, right? But I think I agree with Justin in that that's not really a modality that they're specifically training or care a lot about. Can they do it? Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of instance where they have to try, at least not in the capacity that we do, right? We're very rarely doing just one-off long jumps, right? Sometimes you're doing like a running pre or like a running cat, but for the most part, you're striding, and there's no strides in basketball, right? So that, I think, is somewhere that parkour athletes would have them be without any sort of training. Like if you took a NBA athlete and you trained them on strides, would they be able to jump farther than us? Absolutely.
yeah, they're well prepared for it.
But they don't train that, so they would need to be taught on.
I would say that if we're talking about jumping to a bar or a hang, like let's say you're
Cat
going to
leap.
jump to a ledge, or even do a cat leap, then I think they might, because they're oftentimes training to jump to the rim or get close to the rim in order to lay up or to dunk, right? So on the foot side, no, you're probably right. Like, I mean, they aren't typically training to stride and precision jump another athlete, which would be cool. Like if it was stride, plyo off your defender, dunk, that'd be dope. But if we're talking about to get their hands to something, I don't know.
Yeah, I could see that. Cat leaps seem to correlate well enough.
Yeah, like imagine like the free throw or close to it or whatever the equivalent would be if you have the open space to dunk being a cat leap in place that. I mean, that might. Cat leap's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
So what about, oh, sorry. Do you want to say something else about that?
No, I was just saying, I think their mechanics or their body shapes going into the dunk would not lend well to a wall.
No, yeah, it's swinging.
There is
Like,
that.
I mean, if you're here and there's a wall there, and then you catch it, you're just gonna do the George of the Jungle.
Right. Yep, swing underneath. But also, they're,
But
and they're
that
also
being
not.
said, they're intelligent people, and they wouldn't jump to a wall like that, I'm assuming. So,
I don't know what that means.
5 minutes.
5 minutes to what?
Just ended.
Just tell me what time it is. Oh, no way. All right. So the jump to the grab, they're also not trying to top out,
yep.
right? So the swing, the only reason they're gonna actually try and only grab as much as they need to ensure that the ball makes it in the basket and they don't fall over and die because there are people underneath them and whatever, right? So the objective of jumping to it and hanging is like we would want to jump, hang, and we wouldn't want to leave. Like you want to hold on to that and go up. And
Yep.
and obviously the diameter of the rim is nothing like the diameter too.
bar.
the bars that we're jumping to or the walls that we're jumping to. Volleyball, Justin was just hinting at that. I think
Yep.
that's another good observation. Those guys jump.
Yep.
They do.
They are high jumpers.
Yeah, high
and,
agility.
And if they're doing sand, then they're also on some pretty uneven surfaces, so their ankles
Yeah.
are going to be potentially
and then shoulder development too.
right
They're gonna
spiking,
smack that ball.
and
yeah.
they hit the ball, so shoulders are going to be developed.
Lots of overhead. Maybe that's the sport that's closest in shoulders besides gymnastics. But
No, we'd have to go to climbing. I feel like
oh yeah.
like speed climbing, or because they get
Yep.
or sports with dinos.
Sports was I was like
Maybe.
dinos. I was
Yeah,
saying
there's
dinosaurs.
No, there's no
Yeah, that too.
swinging, but
Run from them.
yeah.
There's not as much swinging.
Yeah, so volleyball I would say would be really good for looking at vertical jump again, as well as like some agility training. But again, like they're diving at the ground with like no regard for, you know what I mean? Like they're diving at the ground because it's on sand, and so they know they can take that hit.
Yep.
So even their like horizontal jumping is the mechanics aren't there to continue that momentum. So I don't know if I would take that. But the vertical jump, they're landing on uneven surfaces. So whatever they're doing to train ankles and calf, Achilles tendon region would probably have some benefit.
Yeah, I think so too. That's a good one. And then a few quick others that we may not know as much about, just because they're popular. We were talking about climbing some. I think a lot of people look at the climbing skills in what happens in parkour, and then they try and translate that. I think one of the differences that I notice is that for the most part, when you're training indoors, and more so on features that are built in cities and whatnot, your grip is this 90-degree grip, right? Or the bar scaffolding diameter.
Yeah.
So where climbers are exceptionally good at holding on to stuff that wasn't really designed to be held on to.
Yeah.
And just has any particular shape. Right, exactly. They've got this like kung fu grip to grab onto anything and pull in, like they're like little lizards, they can hang on any of that stuff. But most of the time in parkour, like your grip is gonna end up being on a 90-degree surface or on a bar. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, there are some odd scenarios where you could sort of like use that skill to sneak in some stuff on, especially in outdoor environments, right? Which, we found in nature a little more.
Yeah, I mean, I think for the average person or average parkour athlete, yeah, it's gonna be 90 degrees or a bar or a rounded, concrete ledge or something.
Yeah.
Unless you're doing bouldering and the speed climbing or the challenge climbing that Ryan does. So
There is an advantage to knowing those skills, but if we're talking about sport parkour for the most part, you're looking at 90 degrees or you're looking at scaffolding diameter bars, right?
yep.
You may be better off spending time working on different surfaces in that shape than you would be to actually change those shapes, right? So working on wood versus potentially metal, potentially the rubber mats or whatever you see more and more, that might be more of an advantage than actually working on a different shape, is to work on those surfaces.
Yeah, that's a good point. Where I think a climbing athlete coming to parkour is there's zero jumping in climbing. So that's like a whole realm of study that a climber would have to add to their toolbox, which is a long and complicated road to get. So like that's a pretty big disadvantage to come into the sport with.
Also topping out, like lots of times climbers
Don't top out.
climb, but they don't actually top out. So that transition range of motion from the hang into support.
Yeah.
And the chest
Especially
on
using
top.
like a vertical wall and supporting, like where there's not a grip for your foot and it's just friction. I see that being a hard transition for them. So used to having their toe onto something and having that's what helps them get over the top too. So
And also,
yeah, climbing's pretty far away.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it.
Yeah, I would say a lot of people would equate climbing to parkour, but there's again like gymnastics and parkour. On the surface, they look similar, but when you dig in, you're like, oh wow, these are actually two wildly different sports that are in a lot of ways on opposite ends of the spectrum, right? Where parkour is primarily a lower body sport, climbing is clearly not a lower
Mhm.
body sport, so that difference is pretty massive.
That doesn't mean lower body's not used in climbing. That just means that
But it's just not used
it's
in
not
the way that we
power.
use it.
It's technically not power.
Like, I mean, they definitely will hold the leg up here and
Right.
like, yank on it, which is
Some-
impressive stuff. But yeah, you don't see parkour
Doesn't
athletes
translate
doing that.
super well. Okay, so you got to go out, you get a grab bag, you get 3 abilities from any of the sports that we've talked about to wrap up. You're going to pick the sport and the skill you're taking from the sport. What sport and what are the 3 skills? It can be 3 sports, 3 skills.
I mean, yeah, vertical from basketball.
You can take the
Absolutely.
vert from basketball.
Yeah, you should.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think that one's on all of our list, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Speed from football.
The acceleration
Yeah. And the cutting.
and the agility.
Those really
yeah.
short bursts of speed with lots of cuts. And stability. I got one more.
Yeah, you get one more.
And then it have to be swinging from gymnastics,
The high
shoulder
bar.
development. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, like ring skills, gymnastics ring skills. Those dudes have some shoulders. They train the longevity right out of them.
Mhm.
But for the first like half of their training, it's all uphill there, right? And then
Mhm.
and then they get to the point where they have those skills and they just abuse them
Yeah.
into the next realm of life.
Yeah. Yeah.
The amount of forces that they can hang on to in swinging in gymnastics is just ridiculous. Like that 16-foot flyaway regrab that the Guinness World Record guy did.
Oh yeah.
Did you see
Yeah, I
that?
saw the video of that.
Freaking massive.
Colin, we should link that one out for folks to
Yeah.
see. Yeah,
one's
16-foot flyaway regrab.
So and then also the one arm stuff that the gymnastics does. So those pirouettes that they do, and then the variety of grabs that they're doing on the bar too. So they're grabbing it backwards. So yeah, that's the take. I think that one would probably be the most exciting for me, but I think the one that is the most difficult for me to attain would be the vertical from basketball.
Yeah.
That one's tough.
Yeah, I will go with basketball vert. I'm going to go with like track for like the running stride
Yep.
distance. And then I'm going to go with... Ooh, you got me thinking about gymnastics now. Like, if you're going to take the rings, I might take the high bar now that I think about it. But really the thing is that the rings are going to set you up for a broader variety of what you can do with your shoulders, for sure.
Yeah,
That's true. One thing that I think is kind of cool about gymnastics is you typically don't have a gymnast performing in a singular event, right?
Yeah.
So track, you do see somebody sprint. You see it pretty often too, but you usually see a athlete doing a event, and maybe they're doing a couple of others, right? Like you see sprinters do 100 and 200, right? And then maybe some of those guys are doing hurdles. But usually a hurdler is a hurdler, and a 100 meter is a 100 meter, right? And your jumpers are just your jumpers. But in gymnastics, they typically do all of their events. So he will do a ring routine, he'll do a pommel horse routine, he'll do a floor routine, and so they'll do these different routines that does lend themselves to be more well-rounded. So I don't think you need to pick the event. In track, you would need to pick the event because those athletes are separated from each other. But I think you could say gymnastics because they tend to train all of their events. And you get your ring and your high bar.
Okay.
Uneven bar for ladies.
But this just really, I want to point out that this just really fills that gap. Like the first thing we went to was what abilities are in the lower body, right? And we have to remember the humans are pretty, like, just overall dominance is highly dependent on the dexterity of the upper body and the power and strength that comes from the lower body, right? The mobility and around mobility, right? So we can jump, we can climb, we can run, and those are the advantages that we're going to take into parkour. So for me, I almost wanted to pick three lower body abilities, and I was like, oh shoot, I got to save one for the upper body because you need it for climbing, you need it for laches, you need it a little bit of strength for the style stuff as well too. Did you have different ones, or did we?
No, I think my list was gonna match Justin's almost exactly.
What did you pick for the upper body? Oh, the high
Gymnastics. Yeah.
gymnastics. Yeah, gymnastics upper body. So perhaps both track and gymnastics could try to take on parkour in order to quench our thirst and need for a sport that actually has.
Yeah. I mean, definitely, I would most certainly go with track and field, just because
Yep.
they're so much more objective based, and there's not. We don't have to worry about like judges, which I feel like is a huge thing from gymnastics. I mean, that's the complete opposite of how our culture forms in parkour. So to try to get everyone to do the moves in the same fashion, it's just complete. But then if we're just doing things in objective, I would really love to see parkour metrics measured, at 100%.
Right.
Yeah.
That sounds super
Sounds
cool.
really cool. Also, like to bring up before we close out, we had a slight discussion on like the body type stuff. So, if you're training to build a body for parkour, the question would be: is there a specific parkour body type, or is parkour sort of coming into a time when it is like a sport where you might have like a running back and a wide receiver body type, and they would be better at two different things? So do you guys think that that's the case with speed and skill? And if it is, then what about style?
I think there will be. I think there has to be, because people are going to continue to push the realms of each of those individual areas, events, if you will. And just by the nature of specialization, you're going to see body types emerge that are different, which I'm super excited about, because I think it gives athletes in parkour more options going forward. A kid can walk into it and say, well, I'm not tall like a speed athlete. I'm not tall and wiry like a speed athlete, but I am short and stocky like a style athlete, right? Or a skill athlete. And so I think it gives them something that they can look to and be like, that's more like me, if that's how they make their decisions, right? That's not saying that like,
Because they can see themselves doing it.
exactly, right? And that matters. Whereas like, short kid may love basketball, but he knows
It's very tough.
he's not
It's
most
very
likely going to make it into the NBA.
Very tough.
But he can love the sport and still do the sport, and that's great. But if there were multiple, like there was this is kind of silly, but if there were like a short guy NBA, right? He might be like, oh, cool, well, I could do that, and I love basketball. That being said, that's, the sport likes what the sport likes.
Yep.
So I think it's cool. I would love to see that. I don't know what those are necessarily going to be.
Oh, so you don't think that it is the, like, basically for, I think for skill, it's very likely that that's going to be someone who is more like has a gymnastics upper body and some kind of legs, but maybe their legs don't even need to be as big as the.
I don't know. A lot of the skill stuff still requires
Huge jumps,
monstrous jumps. So
Strides and broad jumps, plyouts for sure.
So you might get that.
I think you're still gonna get.
You're probably gonna get a more balanced
You're
aesthetic.
gonna get your like taller, bulkier athletes who look more like they spend a traditional time in the weight room, whereas speed athletes are gonna have similar height. Maybe they could be a little bit shorter. We've seen a lot of
Fast speed.
amazing speed athletes that are on the shorter side, right? But they have that lighter build, and they're really, really fast twitch, which helps them get through those courses. So I could see it going either way.
But to close out, let's pick an athlete who might body type that might fit in speed skill style. Because we're going to try and be
Okay.
prophetic and say, all right, in the future, we know that this will eventually distill down to specialized body types, because that's just what happens with sport, especially in the West. Like, what's the athlete of the future?
Okay, for speed, Joseph Henderson.
Okay, all right, which would be
he's tall, but not like tall, right? He's like he's what, 5'10"?
yeah,
5'9", 5'10". So he's not like he's average height
right.
wise, but he's a little bit thinner. He's lighter. I think he was saying he's like 145, 150, something
Okay.
like that.
Yeah.
Body weight. He may be more. I may be misremembering.
Yeah, maybe prior to his MMA
But anyways,
career.
so Joseph Henderson for speed, Tim Champion for skill.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Daryl has like a very similar build to Tim. Tim's just a bit taller, and Daryl's still an amazing jumper, so I could see Daryl's body type too. And then I actually think like a Joey, Adrian, or Max. Why can't I remember Max's last name?
Henry?
No.
No. He's talking about Max, who did the
From
double
Forge.
side.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The double side pre from SPL. That's all right. We'll link him out. We'll give him a shout out. We'll link him out. Call him. We'll find him.
Yeah, like Joey, Adrian, or Max, because they're both shorter, a little bit broader,
tighter,
shoulder-wise,
center of gravity.
but really, you can watch them go for those flips, and you're like, what? How many spins was that? Right. I think that's the body type for
style. Yeah, style is going to have to end up. I agree with you. I would say style. If I'm going to pick sports, I'm going to say the future looks like. I'm going to limb and say that height is going to really start to matter with speed, and I'm going to say basketball athlete for speed. I'm going to say for.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think that's what they're going to look like, and then I think that for the style, they're going to look like gymnasts. They're going to be shorter. They're going to set tight, compact, tight center of gravity, little powerhouses, right? And then for the skill side, I think you are looking at that more well-rounded physique because you have to be able to emit quick power. So I would say, you're getting closer to that, I don't know if I'd say running back because I think those guys are actually a little big.
They're a little on the heavy side.
They're a little on the heavy side. So
But
who would be...
Like we were saying before, they're getting hit.
They are
so
getting
that's why
hit,
they have to have that
exactly.
extra weight.
So who would be the equivalent that's maybe a little lighter in that ability? Yeah, but those guys don't. Ed Collins motioning like a fighter, but those guys don't run. They fight. They're
Yeah,
fight,
I don't know.
not
I
fight,
don't think you're gonna be able to pick a body type. I think it's.
For
I mean,
style?
I think you'll have a.
Or for skill? For skill?
No, for any of them.
Really?
Like, maybe skill, you could probably get close because you're gonna need to be pretty bulky for skill. I think.
I'll say this.
So much power involved, but for speed,
I mean, I do think, I agree with you in that, these are just, predictions, if you will. But I think it's super cool that it's just as likely to be wrong, right?
Yeah, we
I
could
think
be
that's
wong.
amazing.
But
I think that's super cool.
5 to 10 years down the road, we can come back, we can listen to this episode and be like, all right, who was right, who was wrong? So I'm going to say somebody, gosh, is there a position
for every person you're gonna have, I mean, Nate Weston does not fit the short, stocky style at all. And
That's true. He's tall.
He's
He's
won
heavier.
every competition I've seen him at. So
It's true.
and then, but then I think it's Sean Higgins, and I think of just how much style he has. But it does seem like bigger moves win style competitions.
Yeah, I think it depends on the what the event bias is, right? Is it a lot of bar stuff, or is it a lot of floor stuff, right?
Yeah,
So,
we don't know
we don't know yet.
where, style definitely has a wide range of directions that it can go in terms of how it's being judged. That would dictate what sort of athlete it
And
excels at.
if we're lucky, the dynamic nature of parkour will throttle the hyper specialization in body types that we've seen in other team sports.
Yep.
Mhm.
It's very complex and it changes, and so adaptability and creativity, hopefully, like other things like dance and like b-boy and martial arts in many ways, hopefully wins out, I think, over the long run.
Yeah.
And when we see this distilling of what features are involved in parkour competitions to the point where people can specialize like that, I think that's probably going to be the biggest lever as to where you see a specialization in body types. So as long as we stay true to our nature of a varying environment and complexity and surfaces, I think that is our strength in parkour, that adaptability and that diversity. If the diversity of the environment continues to change, it's going to be very hard for body types to be selected against. So,
Agreed.
Yeah.
And I think that's super cool.
Which is why we're not gymnastics.
That being said, a lot of body talk in this episode, so love your body.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's right. Exactly. What? Yeah. Do you want to talk about a body vulnerability there, Jesse?
It's pretty easy. I've been short my entire life. There's never a growth spurt for me.
I'm still hoping.
You're hoping.
Sometimes I wake up in the night and my knees ache, and I just that's not me getting older. That's growing pains.
That's growing pains.
No, everybody's got different bodies, and I think what's amazing and cool about parkour is that you can be good at it, you can be great at it, and you can move regardless of what your body type is. Mm-hmm. So even though we talked a lot about this is what we think is the ideal body type for this event or this thing. If you're a tall, lanky dude and you want to do flips, do some flips, bro.
Yeah.
Like, don't let anybody be like, you're too tall to do flips. And if you're short and you want to jump like a freaking jaguar,
Yep.
go out there and train and jump like a jaguar.
Puma.
Because I would love to be wrong.
Yes, and also let's point out, even with the hyper specialization of these team sports over all of these years, and these very simple environments that they can select against, which they have, you still have anomalies. You still
Yep.
have 5 foot something, but like, what's the shortest pro basketball player? I guarantee
Maybe it's
that
like
they're
5'7" or something.
I guarantee there are short guys out there. Same thing with football and same with these other things. Yeah, you get the advantage, but you know what? If it's what you love and you want to go to, and also you don't have to be a pro at this stuff as long as you enjoy doing it. So
3.
5'3"?
5'3"?
That's going to be like 1970s.
It was like 1987.
1987. Even though
That's
was
relatively recent.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think that's a really good point, right? Like, there is definitely like a uniformity in these sports that have been around for a very long time, and they pick that body type. But then you have those anomalies that still perform just as well
right.
as those guys, and that, I mean, we don't know where those come from. We don't know what those factors really, like, how they came into play. So who knows? Like, you could be that one, right?
Be the one. Be the chosen one.
Yeah.
Against all odds.
Yeah. So if anything, use our bashing talk as encouragement to prove it wrong. That's
Or
what
you
I
could
would
just
do.
go listen to the other freaking 9 podcasts where we talk mostly about the psychology of stuff, and you should be able to get enough value from that.
Love yourself.
Yes, love your body.
Love your body.
And,
love
be
your
the chosen
friend's
one.
body. Love your neighbors and everybody's body, because
Love
There's
body.
all sorts of
love
cool stuff.
everybody.
love everybody.
And then be the chosen one. We move forward. Good?
Good.
All right.
Peace, friends. Thanks for listening, guys.
See you guys.